Good afternoon, everyone. That introduction might just get me to steal Mr. Libelo's job at Sasol. Is he still here? Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm getting the graveyard shift, as it's called. So I'm going to try my best to keep within time. If you allow me, Nsiki, we'll probably just take questions as I go along or right at the end.
It's up to you if you want to take them as you go.
Okay. I'm happy to take questions as I go. So I just want to cover my agenda points. So I'd like to introduce you to procurement as an element of supply chain. I know that procurement is known as tendering in South Africa, but I just want to paint a picture of where or what is procurement within a business environment, both for you as entrepreneurs in your own businesses, but also for companies such as Sasol, just to give you a much broader understanding. And then I'd like to touch on some global and local events that happened impacting on supply chains. Finally, then we'll talk about some SME procurement strategies that I believe might help you in your businesses. I have been asked during break to also talk about what corporates would typically expect from entrepreneurs when you are dealing with a chief procurement officer, a procurement manager, a head of supply chain, etc., for the purposes of supporting some of you probably who are still trying to get into a corporate sector, to sell your services or your products, or for those of you that probably were thinking supply chain is tendering only. Okay, let me move on. So what is procurement? Procurement is an element of a broader supply chain management process. What is supply chain? Supply chain is the flow of goods from manufacturing lines all the way to the end customer. So you, in your own household, you have someone who's responsible for procuring groceries in your household, the food that you ultimately get access to at Pick n Pay, at Woolworths, at Checkers, at ShopRite, wherever, would have gone through a supply chain process. I'd like to, I'm supposed to do this myself, sorry. I'm spoiled. So in terms of the supply chain, value chain, typically whether it's a product supply chain or a service product supply chain, you would start with an R&D process. We had our CSR people here talking about the importance of research, development, the importance of having some market intelligence when building your business processes, when building your products that you are offering to the market. So in any supply chain, R&D is important. You have to look at new product development. To grow the business, you have to look at innovation. After that, there's typically a planning process. So you would plan for production. So you need to understand how much raw materials you require for you to be able to meet customer requirements from a production perspective. Then you would have to do the sourcing and procurement. So sourcing and procurement is just an element, and this slide is really just to show you where it fits into the bigger picture. So in public sector supply chain, when you hear people say supply chain management, they're not only talking about tendering, it's a whole stream of processes that inform the flow of goods throughout production lines all the way to the end customer. Of course, it's not all businesses that are built on manufacturing. There will be businesses that are maybe importing, who are agents, who get products from principal dealers and they have to supply to their customers. There are businesses who are services businesses, just like mine, just like some people who are here in the audience who are probably running engineering services company or any other services related companies. Those businesses also do have a supply chain. So the service for you to be able to ultimately deliver a funeral policy to an individual that has gone through a supply chain as well, but in a form of a service, because someone has to decide to craft the process that best meets that customer to be able to offer that service. So also, manufacturing is part of the process. I'm going to run through quickly because our focus is more procurement, logistics, and of course, what is very important today is also disposal. Goods are now re-entering the supply chain when we have to remanufacture. If you find, for example, in the engineering space, you would have to take some of the components that are too old, required to be refurbished, to take them back into the supply chain for remanufacturing. It's the same with recycling. We see paper being recycled today, plastic being recycled. That still talks to the process of supply chain management. And most of these processes have to be enabled by technology. So there's a lot of technologies currently to enable our supply chain. So it could be a process optimization technology. It could be a technology that just helps you have transparency into your business, your processes, to be able to see how you are performing. If I could just make an example, if you're running a manufacturing or you've got factories, it could be a technology that is able to tell you across all your factories where, when you move your products, where your product is at any particular time, whether it's a global business or a local business, but you're able to track and trace your product from that factory all the way to your final customer. So there's been quite a big evolution in technologies for procurement and supply chain. Some of you working for Sasol, you know how often you've changed from different systems. I know even myself from a supply registration process, there was Ariba, but now we've registered on Linkage. So there's always a new technology. In the past two years, I think some of the speakers have already spoken about, there's been huge disruptions in supply chains. Oh, that's me having to skip again. I've just picked the three because we are all familiar with them, and I think those are the ones that have mostly disrupted our lives in our businesses. 2020, January, well, for us, it was March here in South Africa. Up until now, we're still wearing masks because of COVID-19. So COVID-19 disrupted a lot of supply chains globally. A whole lot of companies in South Africa had to be shut down. There was shortage of products because of challenges in logistics, because of lockdown. Certain countries had to shut their ports, so goods were not coming into South Africa, which challenged a lot of us because a lot of companies were either buying products from China or other global companies, so the goods weren't able to come through to South Africa, whether raw materials or the final goods that you are selling in your business. So all of us were disrupted. So the supply chains were disrupted globally because of COVID. Another catastrophic incident was in March last year when there was a blockage in the Suez Canal of a vessel called Ever Given. Over 62 container ships were stuck there for, how long was it? I can't remember the number of days that the ship was stuck there. What that meant is that there was a lot of disruptions in supply chain again because a whole lot of products were sitting in the Suez Canal and could not reach their final destination. You will obviously know we had our own here in South Africa. I thought I should include a local example as well. where we had the social unrest last year, July. Distribution centers looted, retail companies looted, whole lot of SME businesses also looted, which caused a huge disruption in the supply chain space as well for businesses. And for me, this was actually confirmation that supply chain is the world. You know, for us, for you, like I mentioned, the grocery example, for you to have food in your home, you require a supply chain process to work efficiently, effectively. You know, for you to be able to get your right policies in your household to protect yourself from an insurance, you need a functioning supply chain. So without the supply chains, we do not have functioning businesses. Without the supply chains, we don't have effective or efficient businesses. So even with yourselves as entrepreneurs, whether you're a service business or a product business, you do require to have the right processes, the right systems to be able to run your supply chains, even at a smaller scale as a small business. So now I want to touch on what Jabulile has asked me to speak to you about regarding the expectations by corporates on how when you're dealing with your procurement officers, your procurement managers, your head of supply chains. So it's just starting with something as simplistic as, you know, when you are providing them with that profile, business profile, professionalism is very important. In my previous life, I used to be a procurement manager as well. I would have a lot of, as you can imagine, SMEs, entrepreneurs, coming to my office to bring their profiles because they are looking for business at Barloworld, they're looking for business at De Beers, you know. So they would come dressed smartly, nice suits, but you look at the document that they're giving you, very disappointing. So what I used to say is that, Buti, uyabona mase uzokwazi ukuthi le document igqoke kahle njengawe, ubuye ke. Please only come back when your document is as smart as you. So I'm trying to emphasize there that professionalism is very important. So if you're trying to approach a corporate for business, your documentation, how you present yourself, needs to come through as very professional, because first impressions last. So that's a very important thing. Secondly, when it comes to pricing your services, your products, you have to demonstrate that you have the market intelligence, you've done your research, you've got a clear costing and pricing strategy. You can't say, it's Sasol, I'm just going to charge 6,500 rate per hour. For me, my level, I guess, coming from the KPMGs and the Accentures would be, I guess, partner level now. Not even, currently they don't even charge that kind of amount. But I look at Sasol, then I'm like, okay, that's the rate I'm gonna go with. Not knowing that Sasol has got their own internal processes where they're able to check the market. What is the level of Zinhle supposed to be charging us? So it's the same. With your products, you need to build market intelligence informed pricing strategies. Don't just come up with a price because you're thinking about the school fees or the bond or whatever it is that you need to sort out at that time. Yes, Sissy?
Well, just on that, I have a question. Do you agree that when it comes to empowerment or transformation, it's expensive? When we're coming to understanding the pricing dynamics. I don't know if it's going to be a question or it's going to be a comment, but I'm looking at myself as an SME in the space that I'm in the technology space specifically.
Yes.
I'm competing against BCX in this case. They're doing the very same thing that I am doing, but our pricing and economies of scale, how much is Sasol aware of the price differences that I'm going to produce and give to Sasol and what BCX is going to give to Sasol? Is Sasol aware, and does Sasol know why it's like that? Obviously, if they have done their market, obviously they're not in that business to be checking, price, whatever, but obviously they also want to spend with SMMEs that does the very same thing that they spend with BCX. But the price dynamics and the economies of scale, to be honest, are not fair. Because why? You're looking at an American vendor who says, I've been in business with BCX for 40 years. Therefore, they're a platinum partner. They qualify for a 65% discount. I don't as an SMME. But I do the same thing as BCX. I add the same value or even more. I create jobs. BCX doesn't anymore.
Yes, no, that's a good point. So I understand there are those specific challenges around the different types of products. The fact that if you have a relationship for 10 years or 12 years or whatever with a particular client, obviously over time, they will understand your pricing formulas, they will understand your pattern, and for them also, they would have had to take advantage of that long-term relationship that they've created with you. So, which is where then those 65% discount would come in. So there is an expectation that obviously those dynamics needs to be understood by the procurement person who's evaluating you against BCX. What I normally say to SMEs that I work with is, it's important for you as well to break down your costs so that they are able to understand exactly. If I say 1,500 per unit and I'm selling, what is in your business space, for example? Yes, exactly. What is that pricing informed by? So what are the cost drivers? So if there's I know it's a wrong example, I don't know that category. Let's say if there's a steel component in that, to what extent has the price of steel gone up to impact the pricing, your pricing? So for me, I always say, for as long as you are able to justify how you came up with your pricing, your cost elements, the person sitting on the other side in procurement will then be able to understand. Also, they cannot compare Smukeliso with Accenture. It's completely unfair. But also, as Smukeliso, I can't charge my Accenture rate because I don't have as much high overheads as they had, So for me, it's easier to then play around with the numbers depending on the type of client that you're approaching. For example, I would typically create different pricing structures for different industry clients. Like we have different rate card for public sector, SOCs, as well as government institutions. We've got a different rate card for private entities, and that is informed by the thinking of knowing exactly how much it would go into that service or that product, and hoping that the procurement person who's evaluating will understand those dynamics. Of course, from an ESD perspective or ESD strategy, a corporate can also decide for this category of suppliers, we would like, or we are happy to take a small premium because our strategy requires for us as Sasol to support this group because they fit very well into our supply chain. So it's always a decision that's informed by what's available, or the strategies of the corporate, but also you as an SME making an informed decision based on understanding the cost element of your product. Yes, Sisi.
Thanks. Good afternoon, sister. My name is Nompendulo Kupuza from Spalo Petroleum.
Yes, ma'am.
We're suppliers of bulk diesel to the mining sector, office parks and retail stores. My question on the pricing is, when we bid in the mining sector, if you can help us how best we can price. If we go to the mine and then bid, we bid with Sasol, for instance. When we bid with Sasol, I still have to go to Sasol to buy the diesel. So how are the procurement companies work or procurement department work, because potentially the discount that Sasol has given me to buy the diesel is the very same discount that they're going to give it to you. And if they could give me a discount, which means they can actually absorb certain cost and actually their price will be less than mine when I still have to put a markup to put it to you. So how do we maneuver? Because that is the basic challenge that we struggle with when, as far as mining, we
So
lose a lot of work.
it's the markup over markup over markup over markup situation. It's all over. Like I said, it still talks to the strategy of that corporate. So if the corporate says, with diesel or with oil and lubricants, we are happy to take a markup because we are ring fencing a certain portion of our spend for small businesses that we know are going to source for so and so for that spend. We are happy to take the markup, then they can make that decision. But if they don't make that decision, then unfortunately you will lose. You'll be outpriced. And honestly, there is no best answer I can give you, except that it will all depend on what the corporate is willing to accept and whether your product or service is being prioritized for enterprise and supply development. Because if it's not, then they're definitely not going to pay a premium for your products. That's reality at the end of the day.
And there's a question from this gentleman over here.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Timothy Matsinye from Matsinye Trading and Construction. Actually, what I wanted to touch on is what exactly she said. So a suggestion would be, can companies like the ones where we're rendering service to, like Sasol, can maybe they come up with strategy where they will cater for us, because of at some point, like she said, we're competing with the OEMs. So at the end of the day, you find that our pricing and their pricing, they will always outperform us, and we end up not getting such opportunities. Can they put in place maybe some strategies and the way in which they could assist small businesses? Thank you.
Sasol, are you listening? By the way, guys, I don't work for Sasol. Just to... but I just want to add, what we are saying will always be informed by what is being prioritized at any, we're not talking about just Sasol, so any particular corporate, what are they prioritizing? What is their ESD spend? What do they want to focus on? And then they'll be able to make, those concessions around what they accept and what they don't accept from you as the suppliers. There's no one answer, unfortunately. And also, they're not going to accept a higher price because you just approach them and it's a product that they are not even, it's like at the bottom of their list, which is why I always say to SMEs, for me, before I approach any corporate, I read the annual reports, I read sustainability reports. I have to understand what are the key challenges in that corporate, what focus areas are they looking at. So if they're looking at green technologies, what is a product, for example? Some of you might be in the product space. So bringing something that talks to the corporate strategy might assist the corporate to even say, okay, they're 20% more expensive, but they're actually talking to something that's aligned to our corporate strategy. So let's review it, let's have a conversation and see how we support you. But unfortunately, just because Zinhle is coming with her procurement consulting and to a battle world, I mean, they don't care. All they think about is yellow machines, so you need to also be mindful of what the corporate is looking for at that particular time.
Thank you so much, Zinhle. I think maybe just to ask, I think that was a very great tip, because a lot of the questions that have come through have been around how do you specifically match yourself. So I think those are really great tips.
Yes.
Is there a way that a person can kind of identify where they are and how to bridge the gap between what the corporates need to make themselves more attractive?
More attractive, yeah. So the point I made about understanding the corporate, its entire value chain is very important. Maybe I'm fortunate because I do come from a management consulting company. We didn't just go to a client without, getting the right research about their challenges, from reading documents, even, what is on engineering news about Sasol, what projects are they busy doing with, what are they prioritizing in terms of their strategic focus areas, and then looking at your business and saying, okay, we can actually solve that problem based on what Sasol is prioritizing, and then you create a story of how you're going to introduce your offering answering to a specific problem. So reading annual reports, understanding the service offerings and the entire value chain of that company, looking at their competitors as well. So if I'm going to go to a Balo World Equipment, I need to know what their competitor, Komatsu, is doing better than them, so that I'm able to talk to that in my offering, whatever that is relevant. So you need to have the entire market intelligence that will help you, to talk directly to the problem or to the requirement of the corporate. Otherwise, then you just lose them. You're just one of the number, of SMEs that come to them on a day-to-day basis, because you also have to understand, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of us. So without a unique offering or unique value proposition to them, you are just going to be one of them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think I see a lot more hands and people on the app as well are saying we wish we had more time to talk about procurement. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this session. But we will be doing a networking session at the end of today. So you can, if you're still around, please find Zinhle and ask her questions.
Still be around.
Connect with her. You can tell she's passionate and willing to share. So please do connect with her. Zinhle, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just on the app bundle, I have noted your question. We are going to have a Q&A, general Q&A later on. So I'll address that question as part of that particular Q&A. And then for anybody else on the app or even in the room who's been wondering about, hey, I applied, I haven't heard back, or whatever it is, there's an email address that has been shared. So you can email, you can check your application status by emailing contact.sasolsharedservices@sasol.com. So contact.sasolsharedservices@sasol.com. And then I think the other general email address is info.esd@sasol. Okay, yes. So the other email address is info.esd@sasol.com. So if you want to just know general information, you can contact that particular email address. So heading over to our final speaker before we have our general Q&A. So please also think about what questions are you still wanting to ask that are burning, and we can address those in our final panel discussion. Q&A panel. So our next speaker is going to be sharing with us around how do you create a sustainable business model, and how do you set standards within your business that set you apart from your competition. So our final speaker is Khomotso Lekola, who is from BT Industrial. He's the founder and group managing director of BT Industrial Group. Khomotso is a multi-award-winning businessman and was honored by the President of South Africa, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, at the 4th South African Investment Summit as Industrialist of the Year 2022 for the demonstrated commitment to growth, development, and industrialization in South Africa and Africa in general, which is a fantastic achievement. In 2016, Khomotso founded the BT Industrial Group, a polymer processing and engineering business. BTIG manufactures HDPE pipes and a variety of polymer-based medical fabrics and devices. The business has pioneered various technologies and techniques and holds a unique IP. The company has built a customer base spanning Africa, the EU, and the Americas, and this has fueled a 5-year growth CAGR in excess of 139% from the ground up with no acquisition. So I'm really interested to hear what Khomotso has to say. So there he is. Please welcome him to the stage.